The first piece of innovation, which is a really powerful piece that cities and counties don't even realize exists, is the idea of a guide. How do you answer residents' questions before they're ready to apply for a permit, right? And invariably today, uh, they're calling you, right? And it many times takes a lot of time. But for the residents that are used to Amazon and Uber, they'd like at 8 o'clock at night to be able to gather their own information on things like setbacks or fees, etc. Right? But they're not ready to apply. What most cities and counties are doing is loading up their website full of information. What doesn't require a permit, zoning maps, building codes, etc. But as most of you probably know, it just confuses your residents and they end up calling you anyway. I've also seen and heard from cities that say we have our own guide. And when I do a little research and look in on it, what their guide actually is a static PDF document with the words "if applicable" a lot on the guide. And the problem and the reality is the city or county doesn't know the individual's special zoning. They don't know the specifics of the project, so they just kind of put the generics up there for everyone, and invariably this confuses the applicant. So what Clarity has done is we bring in your city or county's GIS layers, even to the degree of knowing whether the city should be applying, or I should say the applicant should be applying in the city. Are they in the city limits? Are they in the county limits where the county does the applications or not? But also, are they in a flood zone? Are they in a historic zone or other types of things that might change the application and require more information or more fees, etc.? We then ask the applicant some simple questions, and these are the same questions that you're asking them because they may change the application and what's required, what the fees will be, maybe whether there's even a permit required or not. How tall is your fence? If it's under 3 feet tall, it doesn't require a permit. So those type of questions. And then we just lay out the application or the guide, I should say, that answers their exact questions. So now the guide, when the applicant selects a button to gather information for their permit or even to apply, they'd come to a landing page a lot like this. And you can see here, one emphasis is these guides can be generated for many different situations and applications as well. Special event permit guides, business license guide, building permits, planning and zoning. Uh, uh, can all be done. And within Clarity, we don't have modules. So all the functionality works for everything. So in this example, I'm going to select a residential building project. And important to note, even on these pages that we're looking at here, is all of this can be configured to your needs, right? If you didn't have business licensing, that didn't have to be an option. In this example, if there's something here you wouldn't call it this type of thing, it can be configured to your exact needs. But in this example, let's say we're looking to do a new accessory structure. And as you can see, Clarity keeps drilling down, making it easy for your applicant to find their type of work. And in this example, we're going to say it's a guest house. So now Clarity is asking for the individual's address. And you can see it can be a parcel number if they don't have an address, or it can be their address. And in this example, I'm going to put 1721, and you can see how Clarity is giving options in and around your city or county. And if an individual picks an area outside the city or county, we'll just nicely tell them they need to go into a different spot and direct them in that way. But in this example, I'll say it's 1721 Keeler Avenue and select it. And you can see that Clariti now brings in and puts a bullseye on the property, also highlights the parcel because we have your parcel layer in there as well. And you can see even Clariti knows the parcel number to this parcel, pulling it from your GIS. But to the resident, they just need to say, yeah, that's my house, and click continue. So now we go to our simple questions. The goal here is that someone at 8 o'clock at night gathering information or applying for a permit doesn't have to stop and be confused and call you in the morning, right? We want these to be simple. What is the square footage? So they can enter in numeric values. Will the wall height exceed 10 feet? Now we have this I'm not sure how to answer it button that you can include for everything. And in this example, you can add more clarifying information so that they don't have to stop, right? They can say, oh, okay, I see what they're asking for and answer the questions. Will the structure include heating or plumbing? Where is the structure's location in relation to the house? You can see we can have multiple choice options to select from. Now, here is an example of a question that is added to this list based on the zoning. And you may have those situations where if they're in a flood zone, we need to ask a few more questions. If they're in a historic area, we have to ask a few more questions. In this example, the location is in a flood zone, so this question of do you have flood insurance comes in. If they're not in a flood zone, this question would not appear. So we'll say yes, and then the last thing, will you be adding at least 1,000 square feet of impervious surface? And we submit our answers. Now here we're looking to generate the fees. We have some cities that don't want to generate the fees up front. They may collect a small permit application fee and then invoice. Again, we can set it up however you want. But in this example, it's based on the number of structures and the project's valuation. So in submitting our answers now, we have our guide. I'll click here and get started. Now the difference, and you probably see it with other permit systems, is with other permit systems, the only way to see more information on the application is to continue to apply for the permit. And this person does not want to do that. And so you can see down here on the left-hand side, we have information only type parts of this. And we also have the application itself that they can look and see what you're going to be requesting of them. And even in this example, all the way down to the various fees that they can look at and see how much this is going to cost. But they did not need to apply, right? So they can go over this guide, and this is saved for them based on a login that they set up. Or they could come in as a guest and gather this information. A lot of contractors, as an example, just come in as a guest and look at what the setback information is, because that's what they were unsure about. And so in this example, you can see we know the zone that this property is in, so we can share the setbacks. And we can also share links to more information on setbacks. We're also, in this example, letting them know, hey, they're properly zoned for the type of work that they're looking to do. But just as easily, we could nicely stop them and say, you are not properly zoned for what you're trying to do. And direct them what they should do next. Maybe they should reach out to planning and zoning, request a variance, and you can direct them on how to do that. But rather than having them apply and then be told, let's tell them early on. But now when we talk about the customization of this guide, Here we're talking about floodplain requirements, and we're saying you're in a floodplain. But it's important to note in this example, if they were not in a floodplain, this entire section would not be part of their guide. So it's truly customized. We have an attachment here that they can download as to what a floodplain is, information on floodplain development ordinances, and even letting them know if and when they are ready to apply, they're going to need to add an elevation certificate, right? An additional step in their application that someone that's not in a floodplain would not have to do. And in this example, we have an attachment here that is more information on elevation certificates. And hopefully you're seeing the goal of Clariti is to share just the information that's pertinent with this applicant, not hitting with a web page filled with 30 to 50 different documents and having them figure it out, but just sharing what's applicable to them. When we get to the application, you can see, or I should say the applicants can see what information you need from them. And maybe they go off and do some research to find this information before they start. We're also letting them know, and you can detail out the format of this plot plan that you need. You could even have an attachment of an example of a correct plot plan that they can see. Same thing with engineering plans. We also can bring on and digitize your PDF documents if you have some of those that need to be completed, and you can identify the mandatory fields that need to be completed. And then finally, as we said before, they can see these fees and see how much they have to set aside before they start this process.